Hi, I'm Quinn, and I'm autistic. In fact, I'm an autistic storyteller. There's a story I've wanted to tell on this channel for as long as I've been making videos, but a couple of things stopped me until now. Firstly, it's a very difficult story for anyone to tell, let alone live through, and I've struggled to find a way to tell it that doesn't trigger my emotions so much I can't finish it. I had to create some distance, if you like, to make it possible. Plus, until about a week ago, there was so much unresolved, the story really only had a beginning and a middle, not an end, so finishing it wasn't really possible. You might ask me why everyone's putting themselves through this. Well, we think it's important we talk about the issue it raises. I think we need to talk about things like this, but I'll say more about that after I've told you the story. Autistic childhoods are often painful tales, especially for the generations who grew up before the autism spectrum was conceived and fully implemented. The story of Finn and his brother Freddie is no exception. Candour is important to autistic people, but sometimes things are just too painful to talk about, so Finn had to find a way of telling his story through a proxy. For 50 years of Finn's life, one individual caused him more trouble than anyone else, by a hefty measure, and about a week ago he had to confront them one last time so he can finally, at the age of 55, draw a line under his childhood and consider it, if not resolved, then at least closed. I've talked about bullying before, but there's an assumption most people make about bullies that frequently isn't true for neurodivergent victims. They envisage a big, surly boy or a spiteful, sharp-tongued girl in the school playground or their workplace equivalents. If we go into the areas of being bullied by authority figures, teachers, pastors, bosses and the like, then it takes a more sinister tone. Eyebrows get raised and warnings of the risks of making serious accusations start reaching people's lips. But there's a particularly insidious kind of bully that only autistic and neurodivergent folks are completely vulnerable to. Stealth bullies hide in plain sight and taunt us with our inability to expose them. They're sweetness and light to everyone else, but to us they're our worst nightmare, because they've worked out how to use our autism against us, and only us. Stealth bullies get away with it because they only target people who are socially less capable or less credible than themselves, which is why stealthy bullies are usually the most unlikely and unexpected people. So this is how Finn's 50-year-long tale of being the victim of a childhood bully only ended a week ago. It's about 7:30 p.m. on a chilly winter's night in the mid-70s. Dad's clearing up in the kitchen after he warmed up pasties for their tea because Mum was in hospital waiting to have a baby. They'd been to see her the night before, and whilst Finn loved seeing his mum, the hospital was a weird place that made him feel uncomfortable and had a weird smell. So, when his dad asked him to turn the telly off from Carry On Screaming and get his coat on, he wasn't very enthusiastic. Not until Dad told him they were going to meet his new baby brother. Finn was 5 years old and pretty typical for an autistic kid of the 70s, before anyone knew what we were. He was in his first year of school and was already feeling how difficult it can be for an autistic kid to make friends. Only a year or two earlier, he'd been exposed to selfishness for the first time, and school had properly introduced him to the alien concepts of lies, ambition, and hierarchy. A brother meant a lot more to him than perhaps it should. As a TV kid, he'd been brought up watching various bands of brothers fighting in war movies, westerns full of blood brothers and pop charts full of Osmond brothers, Jackson brothers and Brothers Gibb. Brotherhood of Man weren't really brothers, he later found out. He'd not yet made a friend at school, but he had something better than a friend now. His mind was full of the tree houses and adventures he and his brother would share as he leapt into the car, bouncing with excitement to meet him, and for a few short years those dreams remained unshattered. That all changed when Freddie started school. Even before then, it didn't take long for folks to notice that Freddie and Finn were very different, especially when it came to those developmental milestones we hold in so much stead. Finn was apparently saying mummy and daddy around 7 months old and talking in short sentences by his first birthday, but he continued to drag himself around on his belly and wait to be picked up to be put on a chair until he was nearly 3, sparking plenty of tests and reassurances that he was just a slow developer. Freddie was toddling about happily at about 6 months, but he didn't utter a word until he was 3. Ironically, their parents' worry about that led to the first time they heard the word autism was a possibility in their family. Finn was scrupulously organised, everything stacked and alphabetised or patterned, whilst Freddie was dirt and chaos. Finn was serious, solitary and studious, while Freddie was rough and tumble and laughs and smiles. Freddie scuffed his knees while Finn scratched in notebooks, and that made their parents very happy. They had a normal kid at last, not another weirdo like the first one. After a few months of infant school, though, more differences started to show. Finn was hyperlexic and taught himself to read before he started school, earning his mum a rebuke from his infant school headmistress. But Freddie struggled with reading. In fact, he struggled with everything except making friends and activities that were physical or competitive. This was the early 80s, so schools were starting to become properly aware of learning disabilities, especially dyslexia, but the test said that wasn't the problem. He was just a slow learner. Not low IQ, not learning disabled, just slow to pick up new skills. I'm not sure if his situation would be seen the same way today, but that's how it was told to them back then. Basically, not to worry, he'd eventually catch up. Meanwhile, Finn had started to realise that he and his brother weren't forming that bond he'd hoped for. Fred may not have started speaking very young, but he made up for it in screaming and shouting, which didn't sit well on Finn's sensitive little autistic ears. He didn't know it then, but it was probably the first signs of Freddie begging for the attention he was deprived of because Finn took so much of his parents' time. Finn had been awkward and troubling to them almost from the get-go, but Freddie had been comparatively simple by comparison. Yes, his slow pace of development had raised some concerns, but they were easily reassured, and anyway, he always looked so happy. If you think I'm going to tell you about how they later discovered Fred really had some deep-seated learning disability or neurodivergence of his own, I'm afraid I'll disappoint. They didn't test for as many things back then, and there's certainly a possibility something was missed or didn't have a name for it back then, but Finn will never know. All anybody knows is that Fred had an average IQ and didn't have any known learning disabilities, so as far as everybody was concerned, he was normal compared to Finn's weird. Nobody knew Finn was autistic at that point, so right there in the early 80s, his role was cast as the weird, awkward, troublesome kid against Freddie's happy-go-lucky, never-a-care-in-the-world smiles. But that was part of the problem. No, Freddie didn't get scolded all the time like Finn did, but then he never got much encouragement either. Finn tried his best to include Freddie and make a proper friend of him, but he always seemed more interested in breaking Finn's Lego creations more than building his own. Finn didn't know it back then, but Freddie was hurting inside himself, feeling sidelined and second best because all attention was on his older brother all the time, and his constant screaming was the first sign of it. As he got older, he started being willfully naughty, but to Finn's confusion, often got away with it the moment he started smiling and giggling. Years later, with the benefit of hindsight, Finn pinpointed the moment everything went pear-shaped, the series of events that would eventually lead to him standing in a courtroom at the age of 55, trying to bring his parents' affairs to a close and thereby sever his last links to Freddie. It was their grandfather's watch. Their mum's father died a couple of years before Finn was born, so he never met him, but they were a lot alike as far as he was told. Quiet, bookish and reflective, not a social man but a studious one. He'd been an engineer in the Navy for many years before he retired from service and worked on Civvy Street for a few years. When they retired from there, they gave him a gold pocket watch, and their mum had kept it ticking ever since her dad died, hanging from a hook on the Welsh dresser in the kitchen. It wasn't particularly valuable, not an antique, and only a 19-carat gold chain, but Autistic Finn was fascinated by its workings. If you popped the back, you could see the clockworks ticking and whirring away, and he spent hours of his early childhood staring at those workings and trying to draw them just right. One day, when Freddie was 5 years old, it vanished. All fingers pointed at Finn, because his fascination with it was well known, especially when he was showing everyone them his many attempts to draw a blueprint of its workings. Had he borrowed it again and lost it somehow? Oh my God, Finn, you didn't give it away, did you? What have you done with it? On day 2, they had Finn turn his bedroom upside down in front of them looking for it, despite his crying protestations that he hadn't borrowed it and he didn't know where it was. On day 3, he came home from school to find Dad home from work early. He said nothing as he grabbed Finn by his arm and marched him upstairs to Freddie's bedroom. He lifted the mattress, and there was Grandad's watch. In pieces. Finn looked at his dad in confusion. Clearly, Freddie had done something to the watch, so why was he being manhandled and shouted at? "What have you got to say for yourself? Why did you break your Grandad's watch, and what kind of monster are you that you're trying to blame it on your little brother?" Dad bent Finn over his brother's bed and pulled his pants down for 6 straps across his bare arse, whilst Freddie sat transfixed, his eyes agog at what was happening. They both knew that Finn was receiving what should be Freddie's punishment, but he wasn't about to tell anyone, and Finn clearly wasn't going to be believed. Finn listened as Dad told him how he'd been so fascinated by the watch he'd obviously tried to take it apart and couldn't put it back together, and rather than admit his mistake, he hid it under his little brother's bed to avoid the blame. Fred was too young and innocent to even think of doing something so horrible, so Dad said. So if he denied it again, he'd get another 6 straps on top of the extra chores and the 6 months of stock pocket money his whining had earned him already. Thing is, if he'd been guilty of what his dad had concocted in his mind, he'd have done it very differently. He'd have borrowed his dad's set of jeweller's screwdrivers and some tweezers and taken his time over it. Freddie had just smashed it to pieces and hid the remains under his bed. Maybe it was a cry for attention. Maybe he wanted it to be found and also to take his licks because at least he would be the centre of things for a while. Or maybe he just did it in a fit of anger, smashing it out of spite, or possibly even an accident, and he got scared. Either way, hiding it under his own bed. Finn tried so hard to understand why he did it and what happened after it, but whatever the reason, the way he was punished for his brother's misdemeanour set a precedent that wouldn't let up for years. From then on, Freddie made a game of it. He'd break things, steal things, even just move things to cause mischief and lead evidence to point to Finn. And every time, Finn's punishment would get more severe, whilst Fred got away scot-free. No matter how old they got, that 5-year gap always weighted the benefit of doubt in Freddie's favour. And even when he did get caught out, he could usually rely on his smiley charm and Finn's stuffy awkwardness to shift the finger of doubt in Finn's way. This is how Finn ended up being bullied by his younger brother. Freddie didn't beat Finn up. He didn't call him names. He just used his superior people skills to make sure Finn could never win at anything or be seen as the favourite even for a moment ever again. From then on, everything Finn did until he finally left home was tainted by Freddie's sabotage and manipulation of their parents. In fact, even after he left home, Freddie, being so much younger than Finn, always conferred him a little extra slack in their parents' eyes. Once Finn had his own place, Freddie had to either clean up his act completely or get caught out for real. There was no big bag nasty Finn there to take the fall anymore, but somehow Finn still ended up on the hook for Freddie's nonsense. Now he was a bad influence on Freddie, who was only just now starting to act up by copying all the bad things Finn supposedly used to do when he was younger. Finn saw less and less of Freddie as the years went on. They'd see each other at Mum and Dad's house occasionally, but Finn tried to avoid him. Whenever their paths crossed, Finn would always end up suffering for it one way or another. He got married in his 20s and moved away from his hometown to take a job further up country, meaning he saw even less of Freddie. But Fred never stopped trying to score points in his absence. Rarely by achieving anything of his own, but by undermining or bad-mouthing Finn. More than once, Finn tried to overcome it all. Be the bigger man, as his dad kept telling him to do. He tried to find common ground they could build on, but all to no avail. Every time Finn went out of his way to welcome Freddie, to do all the friendship-building things, to take no notice of all the little digs and pokes, the point scoring and the abuses of his generosity. But every time Freddie pushed it too far. Way too far. The last time Finn saw him face to face was shortly before Finn got married. Freddie was meant to be his best man, or near as. They had a civil wedding, so he was to be Finn's witness and his ring bearer. They bought him a suit and new shoes and dropped off the reading he was scheduled to do at his home. Finn was in his mid-30s then, and he thought he might have finally cracked it with Freddie. They both had previous divorces by that time, and he really seemed to get on well with Finn's new wife-to-be. After all these years, he thought Freddie might finally be starting to see him as a brother and not just a scapegoat for his misdemeanours and spite. A week before the wedding, Finn got a call from his mum, telling him that Freddie was backing out, and the reasons he gave were beyond shocking. He did everything he could to sabotage Finn's marriage before it even happened. He not only told their parents this new creative pack of lies, he went to Finn's in-laws and everyone who was CC'd on their wedding emails too, telling them that if they didn't intervene, their daughter, relative or friend was going to marry a monster. That was the final straw. Even if Finn had been willing to forgive him, which he was long past by that point, there was no way his wife would be willing to let that go. It wasn't just Finn's marriage Freddie tried to mess up, it was hers too. Finn didn't see him again until a few days ago, and he hopes it's the last time. Until their dad passed away in 22, Finn and his parents didn't see each other very often. Every few months or so he'd go down to visit, but always on the condition Freddie wasn't to know. Even then, he'd park his car a couple of streets away, so there was little chance Freddie would spot it and know he was around. One time, Mum apparently kept Fred busy at the front door while Finn sneaked out the back like some guilty lover in a 70s sitcom. Finn isn't ready to talk about the last few years of his mum and dad's life right now. It's too painful for him. COVID kept them apart for way too long, and things happened he was powerless to stop and unaware of until it was too late. Things that had to be dealt with last week. He came out of that courtroom on top. He won his case and proved his point, and now his mum and dad's affairs can finally be closed and any connection between Freddie and him is gone for good. But he hasn't felt like celebrating. He can't even feel relief from the pain of the last few difficult years, let alone the 50 that came before. He feels only loss and sorrow, emptiness where once there had been hope. He spent a lifetime making excuses for his brother, much like his dad did. It was only in his final years that he heard his dad's side of their family story, and it was an eye-opener. So much as he wishes had been said sooner, including things Freddie should hear, but he never wanted to listen. Even now, Finn can't hate Freddie. He doesn't want revenge, and he certainly wouldn't celebrate Freddie's misfortune, no matter how much pain he's caused. He's not wired that way. He just needed it to end. He's even wondered if he's capable of such emotions, such complete disdain for someone that you'd wish them harm. He's never felt it before, and if he's not prompted to feel vengeful towards Freddie, perhaps it's just not in him. There's no mum and dad to be referees anymore. So in the end, Finn had to turn to a judge to end it. And I can't tell you how sad that makes him. There isn't a metaphor cavernous enough to compare it to. So, why did I just tell you Finn and Freddie's painful story? Several reasons. Catharsis, for one. Getting this kind of stuff out into the open can be good for our own peace of mind. It forces us to confront it, and if there are tears along the way, they're healthy ones. For a lot of autists, we do most of our emotional processing alone, away from other people's feelings and advice. I'm a verbal thinker, so I often reason thoughts and feelings out loud anyway, and I'd still have this conversation with myself if the camera weren't on. But I also know the story I told you will resonate with a lot of you watching. I've lost count of how many people have told me about their bullies, and there's a common theme of being disbelieved running through those tales. Often it's because the bully was untouchable in some way. They held some kind of status or popularity that insulated them from criticism, or their position and responsibility put them out of reach. But stealthy bullies bring another poisonous cargo with them. Shame. Stealthy bullies hide behind implausibility. They conceal their aggression behind smiles, non-threatening signals and preconceptions, using stereotypes and assumptions as their armour. Age can be used both ways, too young or too old to be at fault. Boys bullied by sisters at school lose the argument to gender stereotypes, and very few people will take us seriously if our bully is physically smaller than we are or disabled. It's like bullying can't happen unless our tormentor can physically overpower us, which is nonsense. Freddie is far from the only bully Finn had to contend with in his life, but he's by far the most insidious. Finn lost more sleep, shed more tears, and felt more sorrow and regret over Freddie than any other human being he's known, and he still doesn't know when he'll start to feel safe. But he knows he's not alone, and that's the other reason I wanted to finally make this. Every one of us who's been bullied and disbelieved needs to know we're not alone, and you can be seen by people who know the same pain. I've got no advice on how to deal with bullies here today, only the acknowledgement that it happens and it can be hard, that it can follow you throughout your life and have impacts on future relationships, jobs, and our health. It's unfair, unjust, and incomprehensible to be the victim of a bully, and that isn't something you experience without deep scars. Will Finn ever get over this? I don't know, but at least he knows he's not the only one. Okay, so that's the story, the main part of the video over with. But there's a couple of things about the channel I want to tell you before I finish. I took this off while I was filming, but I'm having to wear this most of the time at the moment. I've not broken anything, but I have got a bad case of tendinitis in my right arm, and I need to rest it. I had the same problem a few years ago when I worked in an office, and since then I tore the same tendon that's giving me jip now, so it's even more painful than it was then. I need to rest it for as much as possible for it to heal, which is going to make editing difficult, and it's probably going to take a couple of months for it to get back to how it should be. So, for the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing videos in this simpler format like this, and covering topics that don't need the full essay treatment. In particular, there are loads of questions and observations in the comments that need more than a simple response, so I'll address some of those too. I've also got a bunch of people offering me help that I need to chat more to and to coordinate, so I need to free up some more editing time to let me get things moving on that front too. Plus, whenever I do a less formal video, loads of people say they like this format and they want more of it, so if you're one of those people, fill your boots, because that's what's coming. Once my arm is better, I'll aim to keep releases going weekly, but alternate between unscripted informal vids and studio pieces. This video has been one of the hardest ones I've made yet, so I hope it proves to be as valuable as I think it could be. Even writing the notes for this one was an emotional experience, filled with tears and sorrow, not to mention committing it to video, so I'd hate for it to be for nothing. Next week, I'll be back with another informal video, and I'll make sure it's a lot more cheerful than this one. I'm Quinn, and I'm autistic. Thank you for watching.